The morning sky over New Haven Colony turned red with warning lights. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the command tower, watching his soldiers run to their battle positions. His hands shook as he held the radio. The message from Earth Command was clear and terrible. "The Krillians have sent their worst weapon," he told his lieutenant Sam Walker. "They call it Vexthar. It has never lost a fight." Sam looked through his binoculars at the empty fields beyond the colony walls. "How big is this thing, Captain?" 12 feet tall. Weighs as much as a small transport ship. Made from the worst predators they could find across a dozen worlds. Jake wiped sweat from his face. And that's not even the scary part. The ground began to shake. Birds flew away from the forests in panic. Every animal on New Haven seemed to know something bad was coming. The colony's detection system started screaming with alarm signals. Dr. Alan Cross ran up the stairs to the command tower. His lab coat was dirty and his glasses were crooked. "Captain Morrison, I've been studying the reports from other colonies. This creature learns from every fight. It gets smarter each time it kills." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Every battle makes it better. It remembers what weapons work against it. It learns how soldiers move and think. By now it probably knows more about fighting than most generals." A massive roar echoed across the landscape. The sound was so loud that windows cracked in the nearby buildings. Children in the colony started crying. Even the bravest soldiers felt their knees go weak. "There." Sam pointed to the tree line. "Something's moving." The trees began falling, one by one. Not cut down but pushed over like they were made of paper. Something huge was walking through the forest, coming straight toward them. Then they saw it. Vexthar stepped out of the forest and into the morning light. The creature was a nightmare made real. Its body was covered in black scales that looked like armor. Each scale was as big as a dinner plate. Its eyes glowed red like burning coals. 4 powerful legs carried its massive body forward with surprising speed. "Holy stars," Sam whispered. "Look at those claws." Each of the creature's feet had claws as long as swords. They dug deep grooves in the hard ground with every step. Its tail was thick as a tree trunk and covered in sharp spikes. Metal parts were stuck into its body, cybernetic implants that made it even more dangerous. "All units, open fire," Jake ordered into his radio. 50 plasma rifles fired at once. The bright blue energy beams hit the creature's scales and bounced off like raindrops. Vexthar didn't even slow down. It looked at the human soldiers like they were insects. The creature's head turned toward the main gate, its mouth open to show teeth like broken glass. Each tooth was bigger than a man's hand. It let out another roar, and this time several soldiers dropped their weapons and ran. "Fall back to secondary positions," Jake yelled, but Vexthar was already moving. The beast ran faster than anything that big should be able to move. It reached the outer wall in seconds. Instead of going around or over, it simply ran through. Stone blocks that weighed tons flew through the air like toys. Sergeant Pete Martinez was manning the gate gun when the wall exploded. The huge weapon that could destroy tanks fired directly at the creature's chest. The energy blast would have turned a building into dust. It hit Vexthar square in the middle and did nothing at all. The creature looked at Pete with what seemed like curiosity. Then one massive claw swept sideways. Pete and his gun disappeared in a shower of sparks and metal. "This isn't working," Dr. Cross said. His face was white with fear. "Our weapons can't hurt it." More soldiers died as Vexthar moved deeper into the colony. It seemed to be studying their defenses, learning how they fought. When a group of soldiers tried to surround it, the creature was ready. It spun around and caught all of them with its spiked tail. Captain Morrison realized something horrible. It's not just strong, it's smart. Look how it moves. The creature was using military tactics. It stayed in cover when possible. It attacked the strongest positions first to break their spirit. It moved like it had studied human warfare for years. "Need to evacuate the civilians," Sam said. In the underground shelters, families huddled together in fear. The sounds of battle came down through the thick walls. Kate Bennett held her 8-year-old daughter Lucy close to her chest. "Mommy, what's that noise?" Lucy asked. She was holding her favorite stuffed dog. a small brown toy she had carried everywhere since she was 3. "Just thunder, sweetheart," Kate lied. She didn't want to tell her daughter that a monster was destroying their home. Other families crowded into the shelter. Old Mr. Frank Davies sat in the corner, holding his wife's hand. Young couples with babies tried to keep the children quiet. Everyone knew their lives depended on the soldiers above. The lights flickered every time something exploded on the surface. Each boom made people jump and hold each other tighter. Back above ground, Vexthar had reached the second line of defense. The creature paused and seemed to study the layout of guns and barriers. Its red eyes moved back and forth like it was solving a puzzle. "It's planning something," Jake said into his radio. "All units, be ready for anything." The beast suddenly charged to the left, then spun right at the last second. The move caught the soldiers completely off guard. Half their guns were pointed in the wrong direction when it attacked. More good men died in seconds. The creature's claws cut through their armor like it was made of cloth. Its teeth crushed weapons and bones with equal ease. Dr. Cross was taking notes even as death came closer. "Captain, I think I understand what we're facing. This isn't just a weapon, it's a learning machine. Every move we make teaches it something new." "Then how do we fight something that learns from our mistakes?" Jake asked. "I don't know if we can." The battle raged for 3 hours. Every attack failed. Every trap was seen through and avoided. Vexithar moved through their defenses like they weren't even there. By noon, most of the colony's soldiers were dead or wounded. The few survivors had pulled back to the very center of New Haven. Captain Morrison looked at his remaining men. 20 soldiers out of the 200 he had started. "With, sir?" Sam Walker's voice was tired and scared. "The creature has stopped moving." They all looked toward the main plaza. Vexithar stood perfectly still in the middle of the destroyed town square. Its head was raised high, and its glowing eyes seemed to be looking at something in the distance. "What's it doing?" one of the soldiers asked. Dr. Cross adjusted his broken glasses and watched the creature carefully. "I think it's listening. Those cybernetic implants in its ears can probably hear sounds we can't." The beast's head turned slowly toward the underground shelter where the civilians were hiding. Its mouth opened slightly, and they could see its terrible teeth gleaming in the sunlight. "Oh no," Kate Bennett whispered in the shelter below. She could hear something moving directly above them. Heavy footsteps that shook dust from the ceiling. Lucy looked up at the ceiling too. "Mommy, is there a big dog up there?" The innocent question made every adult in the shelter feel sick with fear. If only it was just a big dog. Above them, Vexithar had found exactly what it was looking for. Captain Jake Morrison gathered his remaining soldiers in the ruins of the town hall. 20 men was all he had left from his original force of 200. Their faces were dirty and scared, but they still held their weapons ready. "Listen up," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "That thing knows where the civilians are hiding. We're all that stands between it and innocent families." Sergeant Danny Foster, one of the few squad leaders still alive, stepped forward. "Captain, our weapons don't even scratch that monster. How are we supposed to stop it?" Jake looked at each of his men. These were good soldiers who had followed him through 3 years of war against the Krillians. They deserved the truth. "Maybe. We can't stop it, but we can slow it down. Give the evacuation teams more time." Through the broken windows, they could see Vexthar moving slowly toward the underground shelter entrance. The creature seemed to be enjoying itself, taking its time like a cat playing with a mouse. Lieutenant Sam Walker was coordinating the emergency evacuation through his radio. "Transport ships are 15 minutes out," he reported, "but the shelter doors won't hold that long." The beast stopped directly above the main shelter entrance. Its massive head lowered until its burning red eyes were staring at the reinforced metal doors. Steam came from its nostrils as it breathed. Dr. Alan Cross watched from his hiding spot behind an overturned vehicle. He was still taking notes, even though death seemed certain. "It's scanning the doors," he whispered into his comm unit. "Those cybernetic implants are probably showing it exactly where everyone is hiding." In the shelter below, families pressed against the back walls as the ceiling shook with heavy footsteps. Children cried quietly while their parents tried to comfort them. Everyone could hear the scraping sound of claws on metal above their heads. Kate. Bennett held Lucy tighter as the lights flickered again. The 8-year-old girl seemed less frightened than the adults around her. She was still clutching her stuffed dog and whispering to it. "Don't be scared, buddy," Lucy said to her toy. "Sometimes big animals seem mean when they're really just lonely." Old Mrs. Helen Baker, who had lived on New Haven for 30 years, shook her head. "That's no animal, child. That's a monster." But Lucy just hugged her stuffed dog closer. "Daddy always said there's no such thing as a mean animal, just scared ones." Above ground, Vexthar raised one massive claw and brought it down on the shelter door. The reinforced metal, designed to withstand orbital bombardment, cracked like an eggshell. "Now!" Captain Morrison shouted. His 20 soldiers opened fire from every direction. Plasma bolts, explosive rounds, and energy beams all hit the creature at once. It was the biggest coordinated attack they could manage with so few men. Vexthar turned away from the shelter door and looked at them with what seemed like mild annoyance. The weapons that could destroy tanks had left tiny scorch marks on its scales, nothing more. The creature's mouth opened in what might have been a smile. Its cybernetic implants glowed brighter as they processed the attack patterns. Within seconds, it had analyzed every weapon position and trajectory. It moved like lightning despite its size. The first group of soldiers didn't even have time to run before massive claws swept through them. Sergeant Foster tried to dive behind cover, but the creature's tail whipped around and caught him in midair. "Spread out," Jake yelled. "Don't let it get all of us at once." But Vexthar had already learned their tactics from the morning's battle. Every move they made it had seen before. Every strategy they tried, it countered perfectly. Private Bobby Chen fired his rocket launcher from the roof of a nearby building. The missile struck the creature's shoulder and exploded in a ball of fire. For a moment, Jake hoped they had finally heard it. The smoke cleared to show Vexithar standing exactly where it had been. The explosion hadn't even knocked it down. It looked up at Bobby with its glowing eyes, memorizing his position. The building Bobby was hiding on suddenly collapsed. The creature had struck its support beams with surgical precision, bringing down the entire structure without even looking. Away from the other soldiers, Dr. Cross spoke frantically into his recorder. "The learning process is accelerating. It's not just remembering our tactics anymore, it's predicting them. Every battle makes it exponentially more dangerous." Lieutenant Walker tried a desperate flanking maneuver with the last 6 soldiers. They split into 2 groups and attacked from opposite sides, hoping to confuse the beast. Vexthar didn't look confused at all. It spun in place, using its spiked tail to sweep one group while its claws dealt with the other. The move was perfectly timed and brutally efficient. "This isn't working," Sam gasped as he crawled behind a pile of rubble. Blood ran down his face, from a deep cut. "It's like fighting a computer that knows every move we're going to make." Jake was down to his last 5 men. They had given everything they had, and it wasn't nearly enough. The creature stood among the bodies of good soldiers, completely unharmed. In the shelter, the metal door finally gave way with a tremendous crash. Screams echoed through the underground chambers as families saw daylight streaming through the hole above them. Vexthar's massive head appeared in the opening. Its red eyes swept across the terrified civilians like searchlights. Men pushed their wives and children behind them, knowing it would do no good. "Run," someone yelled. "Get to the back tunnels." Panic took over as people rushed toward the emergency exits. In the chaos, families got separated. Parents lost track of their children in the darkness. Kate Bennett was swept along with the crowd, but Lucy's small hand slipped from hers. "Lucy!" she screamed, but the rushing people carried her away from her daughter. Lucy found herself alone in a side tunnel that led to the colony's maintenance areas. She wasn't crying like the other children. Instead, she looked back toward the main chamber where the big creature was trying to fit through the hole it had made. "He's too big for the door," she said to her stuffed dog. "That's why he seems angry. He can't fit." The beast gave up trying to squeeze through the shelter entrance. Instead, it began tearing the metal apart with its claws, making the opening bigger. Captain Morrison made one last desperate attempt to save the civilians. He and his remaining 4 soldiers charged straight at the creature, firing everything they had. "For New Haven," he shouted. Vexthar barely seemed to notice them. One casual swipe of its massive paw sent all 5 men flying through the air. Jake hit a concrete wall hard and slid to the ground, his rifle broken in half beside him. The creature turned back to its work on the shelter. Soon the opening would be big enough for it to enter and finish what it had started. Dr. Cross, bleeding from a dozen cuts, crawled closer to get a better look at the beast. What he saw made his blood run cold. The cybernetic implants weren't just helping it fight better, they were changing it. "It's evolving," he whispered. "The implants are rewriting its brain patterns in real time. It's becoming something new, something more dangerous than the Krillians ever intended." In the maintenance tunnel, Lucy Bennett heard her mother calling her name from far away. She wanted to run toward the voice, but the tunnel she was in led in the opposite direction. "I have to find Mommy," she told her stuffed dog. "But first maybe I should help that big animal. He seems really upset about something." The innocent words would have terrified any adult who heard them, but Lucy was alone in the tunnel, walking toward what everyone else was running from. Above her, Vexthar finally tore the shelter entrance wide enough to fit through. The galaxy's most feared bioweapon prepared to enter the underground chambers, where hundreds of defenseless humans were hiding. The last battle of New Haven was about to begin, and humanity had already lost. Lucy Bennett walked through the dark maintenance tunnel, holding her stuffed dog tight against her chest. The sounds of screaming and running footsteps were getting quieter behind her. She wasn't scared like the grown-ups. She was curious. "Wonder what that big animal wants," she said to her toy dog named Buddy. "Maybe he's lost like us." The tunnel led upward toward the surface. Lucy had explored these passages before when her daddy was working on the colony's water systems. She knew they came out near the central plaza. Behind her, the sounds of terror continued as Vexithar forced its massive body through the enlarged shelter entrance. The creature's cybernetic implants glowed brighter as they scanned the underground chambers, tracking the heat signatures of fleeing humans. Kate Bennett pushed through the panicking crowd, searching desperately for her daughter. "Lucy," she called out again and again. "Lucy, where are you?" "I saw her go toward the maintenance area," said Mr. Frank Davies, the old man who lived next door to them. "She went the wrong way." Kate felt her heart stop. The maintenance tunnels led directly to the surface, right into the path of the monster that was destroying their world. Up in the ruined command center, Captain Jake Morrison tried to stand but fell back down. His left arm was broken and blood covered half his face. Through the cracked windows, he could see Vexithar's massive form disappearing into the shelter entrance. "The civilians," he whispered. Lieutenant Sam Walker, who was barely conscious, beside him, tried to reach for his radio. Dr. Alan Cross had found a hiding spot in the colony's medical center. His hands shook as he watched the creature's movements through his binoculars. The beast was being careful now, moving slowly through the shelter so it wouldn't bring the ceiling down on itself. "It's learning patience," he said into his recorder. "The creature understands that rushing might collapse the tunnels and trap its prey. It's developed hunting instincts beyond its original programming." Meanwhile, Lucy reached the end of the maintenance tunnel. A metal ladder led up to a surface hatch. She climbed carefully, just like her father had taught her when they explored the colony together. The hatch opened into a small maintenance building in the central plaza. Lucy pushed it open and climbed out into the daylight. The plaza was empty, except for broken concrete and twisted metal from the battle. She looked around at all the damage and felt sad. "Someone made a really big mess," she told Buddy. "Daddy's going to be upset when he sees this." Lucy's father was away on a supply mission to the outer settlements. He had no idea his home was being destroyed or that his little girl was walking into deadly danger. The 8-year-old girl walked across the plaza, stepping carefully around the debris. She had lived on New Haven her whole life and had never seen the town square looking so broken. "Hello," she called out. "Is anyone here? I'm looking for my mommy." Her voice echoed off the damaged buildings. In the distance, she could hear the sounds of destruction coming from the shelter area. Something big was moving around down there, making lots of noise. Back in the underground chambers, Vexthar moved through the tunnels like a living nightmare. Its massive body barely fit in the passages, but it squeezed forward anyway. The creature's red eyes glowed in the darkness as it hunted. Families huddled in the deepest parts of the shelter system. Parents held their children close and tried not to make any sound. Everyone knew that making noise would bring the monster straight to them. Kate Bennett was frantic with worry. She had searched every tunnel and chamber she could reach, but Lucy was nowhere to be found. Other parents tried to help her look, but the beast was getting closer every minute. "She must have gone to the surface," Kate whispered to Mrs. Helen Baker. "My little girl is up there alone with that thing." "We can't help her from down here," Helen replied sadly. "All we can do is pray." On the surface, Lucy continued walking through the plaza. She wasn't trying to find her mother anymore. Something else had caught her attention. She could hear heavy breathing coming from one of the damaged buildings. "Is someone hurt?" she asked, walking toward the sound. "Do you need help?" The breathing was getting louder. It sounded like a very big animal that was tired from running. Lucy had heard similar sounds from the colony's livestock when they were scared or excited. She rounded the corner of a broken wall and stopped. There, trying to squeeze its massive body back out of the shelter entrance, was Vexithar. The creature was stuck. In its eagerness to hunt the humans below, it had forced itself too far into the tunnel system. Now its broad shoulders were wedged in the opening, and it couldn't back out. Lucy tilted her head and studied the situation. She had seen animals get stuck before. Once, her neighbor's cow had gotten its head trapped in a fence. Another time, a wild pig had been caught under a fallen tree. "Oh, you poor thing," she said softly. "You're stuck, aren't you?" Vexithar heard the voice and turned its massive head toward her. Its burning red eyes focused on the small human child standing just 20 feet away. The creature's cybernetic processors tried to analyze this new situation. Child, human, no weapons, no fear scent, no aggressive posture. The data didn't match any of its programmed response patterns. Lucy wasn't afraid because she didn't understand what she was looking at. To her 8-year-old mind, this was just a very large, very strange animal that needed help. She had been around animals her whole life on the frontier colony. "You're really big," she said, taking a step closer. "Are you some kind of space dog? You have pointy ears like Rex, the guard dog at the main gate." The creature struggled again to free itself from the tunnel entrance. Its claws scraped against concrete and its tail thrashed with frustration, but it couldn't get the leverage it needed to pull itself out. "Don't hurt yourself," Lucy said, walking even closer. "Getting mad only makes it worse. Daddy taught me that when I got my foot stuck in the mud last year." Vexthar stopped struggling and stared at her. Never in its short but violent life had any living thing approached it without fear. Every creature it had ever encountered had either run away or attacked. This small human was doing neither. "You have really pretty eyes," Lucy continued, now standing just 10 feet from the galaxy's most feared weapon. "They're red like the sunset, but you look sad. Are you sad because you're stuck?" The beast's enhanced hearing picked up something unusual in the child's voice. There was no deception, no hidden aggression, just genuine concern for its welfare. The concept was so foreign to its programming that its cybernetic implants actually flickered with confusion. Lucy sat down cross-legged on the broken concrete, still holding her stuffed dog. "My mommy says that when you're upset, it helps to sit quietly and think about happy things. Want to try that?" She began talking to Vexthar the same way she talked to hurt animals on the farm. Her voice was gentle and patient. She told the creature about her stuffed dog, about her daddy's work, about the pretty flowers that grew near their house. The monster that had destroyed entire military units listened to a child's innocent chatter with something that might have been wonder. Deep in its genetically modified brain, ancient instincts were awakening. Instincts that the Krillians thought they had erased forever. "You know what?" Lucy said, looking directly into those burning red eyes. "I think you're not really mean at all. I think you're just scared and far from home. That must be really lonely." For the first time since its creation, Vexithar experienced something other than rage or hunger. The feeling was so strange that it stopped struggling completely. In the shelter below, people were starting to notice that the terrible sounds had stopped. The scraping and growling that had been getting closer was gone. An eerie silence filled the tunnels. "What's happening up there?" someone whispered. Nobody knew that a little girl was sitting in the plaza above them, talking to their worst nightmare like it was a lost puppy that needed a friend. Lucy Bennett continued sitting on the broken concrete, talking softly to the massive creature stuck in the tunnel entrance. Vexthar had stopped struggling and was listening to her voice with an expression that almost looked curious. "You have really nice fur," Lucy said, even though the creature's body was covered in armored scales. "It's so shiny and black. I bet someone takes good care of you." The beast's cybernetic implants flickered as they tried to process this interaction. Every sensor and computer in its enhanced brain was working overtime, but none of them could explain what was happening. "Are you hungry?" Lucy asked, reaching into her small backpack. "I have some crackers from lunch. Mommy always packs extra food for me." She pulled out a small package of cheese crackers and opened it carefully. The simple action made Vexthar tense up slightly. Its programming screamed warnings about potential weapons or traps. But Lucy just took out one small cracker and held it toward the creature. "Here, try this, it's really good. My daddy brings these special ones from the supply ship." Vexthar stared at the tiny piece of food in the child's hand. Its enhanced senses analyzed it completely in seconds. No poison. No explosives, no hidden dangers, just a simple cracker that smelled like cheese and wheat. "It's okay," Lucy said, moving a little closer. "I know you're probably not supposed to take food from strangers, but we're friends now, right? Friends share snacks?" The creature's massive head lowered slowly until its burning red eyes were level with Lucy's face. This close, she could see that they weren't just red, but had little flecks of gold in them too. "Wow, your eyes are even prettier up close," she said with genuine admiration. "They're like the gems in Mommy's jewelry box." Down in the shelter, people were getting worried about the silence from above. Captain Morrison had managed to crawl to a working radio and was trying to contact anyone who might still be alive on the surface. "This is Morrison to any surviving units. What's the status on the creature?" "Over." Static was his only answer. Everyone who might have responded was either dead or hiding. Kate Bennett was crying as she searched through the tunnels one more time. "Lucy, baby, please answer me. Where are you?" Dr. Cross had managed to get closer to the shelter entrance, hoping to see what was happening. What he found confused him completely. The creature was still there, but it wasn't moving. It seemed to be focused on something outside the tunnel. "That's impossible," he whispered into his recorder. "The behavioral patterns show it should be actively hunting. Instead, it appears to be waiting for something." On the surface, Lucy was still trying to feed the cracker to Vexthar. The creature hadn't taken it yet, but it hadn't moved away either. Its nostrils flared as it smelled the simple food. "You don't have to eat it if you don't want to," Lucy said patiently. "Sometimes animals have special diets. My friend Billy had a lizard that could only eat certain bugs." She put the cracker down on the ground between them and scooted back a little. "There. You can have it when you're ready." Vexthar looked at the small offering on the ground. Something deep in its modified brain was stirring. Memories that weren't its own, passed down through the DNA of countless predator species that had once been pack animals. Lucy yawned and rubbed her eyes. All the excitement and fear from the day was finally catching up with her. "I'm getting sleepy. Are you tired, too?" "You look tired." The creature did look tired. Its cybernetic implants had been working constantly, processing battle data and tactical information. The strain was beginning to show. "When I'm tired, Mommy says I should rest," Lucy continued. "But you're still stuck in that hole. That must be really uncomfortable." She stood up and walked around to look at the situation from different angles. The creature's eyes followed her movements, but it didn't seem threatening anymore. More like a large dog watching its owner. "I think if you push with your back legs and pull with your front ones at the same time, you might get unstuck," Lucy suggested. "That's how Daddy got the tractor out of the mud last month." Vexithar tilted its massive head, considering her words. The child's simple logic made sense. It had been trying to force its way out using only brute strength, but maybe a different approach would work better. The creature adjusted its position and tried Lucy's suggestion. Its powerful hind legs pushed against the ground while its front claws gripped the tunnel edges. Slowly, inch by inch, it began to pull itself free. "That's it," Lucy encouraged, clapping her small hands. "You're doing great. Just a little more." With a final heave, Vexithar pulled itself completely out of the tunnel entrance. The creature that had been stuck for the last hour was finally free. It stood to its full 12-foot height and looked down at the little girl who had helped it. Lucy smiled up at the massive beast. "See? I told you it would work. Daddy's really smart about getting things unstuck." For the first time in its existence, Vexthar felt something that might have been gratitude. The emotion was so foreign to its programming that its cybernetic systems actually shut down for a moment to reboot. "You're really big when you stand up," Lucy observed. "Do you live around here? I don't remember seeing you before, and I know most of the animals in the colony." The creature looked around at the destruction it had caused. Buildings were in ruins. Vehicles were destroyed. The smell of smoke and fear hung in the air. All of this was its doing. But the small human child showed no fear, no anger, no hatred. She looked at it with the same kindness she might show to any animal that needed help. "Are you sad about something?" Lucy asked, noticing the change in the creature's posture. "You look like you feel bad. Did someone hurt your feelings?" Vexithar's enhanced hearing picked up sounds from the underground shelter. People were crying. Children were scared. Families were separated. The creature had caused all of this pain and terror. "It's okay to feel sad sometimes," Lucy said softly. "Everyone gets sad. Even big, strong animals like you." She walked closer to the massive beast and reached out her small hand toward its armored leg. "Sometimes when I'm sad, a hug makes me feel better. But you're too big for me to hug properly." Instead, Lucy gently patted the creature's leg with her tiny hand. The gesture was so innocent and caring that something inside Vexithar's modified brain finally snapped into place. Pack behavior, comfort gestures, social bonding, all the instincts that the Krillians thought they had erased came flooding back in a rush of genetic memory. "You know what?" Lucy said, looking up into those burning red eyes. "I think you're not a mean animal at all. I think maybe you just don't know how to be nice because no one ever taught you." She sat down on the ground again and patted the concrete beside her. "Want to sit with me for a while? Sometimes it helps to just sit quietly with a friend." Vexithar stared at the spot where Lucy was patting the ground. The simple invitation confused every tactical system in its enhanced brain. Sit. Such a basic command, but coming from this child, it sounded less like an order and more like a gentle request. "Come on," Lucy said with a warm smile. "Sit." The word hung in the air between them. One simple syllable that would change the course of galactic history. Vexthar looked at the child, then at the spot she had indicated, then back at her trusting face. For the first time since its creation, the galaxy's most feared bioweapon felt the urge to obey, not out of programming or fear, but out of something that felt almost like affection. Slowly, carefully, the massive creature lowered its body to the ground and sat beside the little girl just as she had asked. Lucy Bennett sat next to the massive creature in the ruins of New Haven's Central Plaza. Vexithar had actually listened to her and was sitting quietly beside her, its huge body creating a shadow that covered them both. "See? That's much better," Lucy said, patting the creature's armored leg again. "Now we can be proper friends." The beast's red eyes looked down at the small girl with something that had never existed in them before. The cybernetic implants that had been designed to make it the perfect killer were now processing emotions they had no programs to handle. Dr. Cross watched from his hiding place, unable to believe what he was seeing. The creature that had destroyed an entire military force was sitting calmly next to a child like a well-trained pet. "This is impossible," he whispered into his recorder. The behavioral modifications should have made this creature incapable of peaceful interaction. Yet here it is, responding to a child's voice like a domesticated animal. In the underground shelter, people were starting to venture closer to the entrance. The terrible sounds of destruction had stopped completely. Some of the braver colonists were beginning to wonder if the monster had left. Captain Morrison managed to stand up despite his injuries. He limped toward the entrance tunnel, his broken rifle held ready even though he knew it was useless against the creature. "Stay back," he warned the civilians who were following him. It might be a trap. But as he reached the entrance, Morrison could hear something that made no sense at all. A child's voice talking happily about something. And stranger still, he could hear what sounded like contented rumbling, like a giant cat purring. On the surface, Lucy had found a piece of rubble that was smooth and round. "Look, I found a ball," she said, showing it to Vexthar. "Do you want to play catch?" The creature tilted its massive head, watching as Lucy rolled the chunk of concrete across the plaza. Its enhanced eyes tracked the movement automatically, following the ball's path. "Go get it," Lucy encouraged. "Bring it back here." Vexthar looked at the ball, then at Lucy, then back at the ball. Something in its genetic memory stirred. Pack hunting games, play behavior, social bonding through shared activities. All the instincts that had been buried under layers of military programming began to resurface. The creature stood up slowly and walked over to where the concrete ball had stopped. Its massive jaws opened carefully, and it picked up the ball without crushing it. Then it walked back to Lucy and gently placed it at her feet. "Good boy," Lucy said, clapping her hands with delight. "You're really smart. Want to try again?" She threw the ball farther this time. Vexthar watched it bounce across the plaza, then looked back at Lucy's expectant face. The child's happiness was somehow important to it now. Making her smile felt better than any victory it had ever achieved in battle. The creature retrieved the ball again, this time with what almost looked like enthusiasm. Its spiked tail, which had been a weapon of destruction just hours before, was actually wagging slightly as it returned to Lucy. Kate Bennett finally reached the tunnel entrance where Captain Morrison was standing. She pushed past him and ran toward the surface, desperate to find her daughter. "Lucy," she called as she emerged into the plaza. "Lucy, where are you?" Then she saw them. Her 8-year-old daughter was sitting in the middle of the destroyed town square, playing fetch with the galaxy's most feared bioweapon. Kate's legs went weak and she had to grab onto a piece of rubble to keep from falling. "Mommy," Lucy called out cheerfully. "Come meet my new friend. He was stuck, but I helped him get out. And look how good he is at playing catch." Vexithar turned its burning red eyes toward Kate. The woman froze in terror, certain that death was about to claim both her and her child. But the creature just looked at her calmly, then turned back to Lucy as if waiting for another game. "That's my mommy," Lucy explained to the beast. "She's really nice. She teaches me about taking care of animals." Dr. Cross emerged from his hiding spot, his hands shaking as he approached the impossible scene. Other colonists began to gather, staring in amazement at the sight of their destroyer sitting peacefully beside a little girl. "How?" Morrison asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How did she do this?" Cross knelt down and studied the creature carefully. Its cybernetic implants were still active, but they seemed to be processing different types of information now. Instead of tactical data and target analysis, they appeared to be focused on the child's emotional state and well-being. "She didn't see a weapon," Cross said in wonder. "She saw an animal, and she treated it like one." Lucy stood up and brushed the dust off her clothes. "He's not scary at all," she told the gathered adults. "He was just confused and far from home. Animals act mean when they're scared, but they're really just looking for someone to be nice to them." The creature's massive head lowered until it was near Lucy's level. She reached out and gently stroked the side of its face, right where normal dogs like to be petted. Vexthar's eyes closed and that rumbling purr sound grew louder. "See?" Lucy said to her mother. "He likes being petted. I think he's been lonely for a very long time." The news of what happened at New Haven spread across human space faster than any military report ever had. Within hours, every colony and ship. In the sector knew that a child had tamed the Krillian Empire's ultimate weapon with nothing but kindness. The reaction from the Krillian High Command was swift and desperate. Emergency orders went out to all their bioweapon facilities. Recall every Vexthar unit immediately. The creatures that were supposed to be their greatest advantage had become their worst nightmare. On the planet Krill Prime, military scientists worked frantically to understand what had gone wrong. How could their perfect killing machines be turned against them by a simple human child? The genetic base was flawed, one scientist reported to the High Command. We used pack predator DNA, but we underestimated the social bonding instincts. The human child triggered responses we thought we had eliminated. The Krillian Emperor himself watched the security footage from New Haven with growing horror. Their entire war strategy had been built around the fear these creatures could inspire. Now that fear was replaced by something far more dangerous. Hope. Recall all bioweapon units, he ordered. Destroy the research facilities. We cannot allow this information to spread to other human colonies. But it was too late. The story of Lucy Bennett and her gentle treatment of the galaxy's most feared creature had already become legend. Human colonies everywhere began to see the Krillian bioweapons not as unstoppable monsters, but as confused animals that could be reached with patience and kindness. 3 months later, Lucy was playing in her family's new garden. New Haven had been rebuilt, stronger and more beautiful than before. Next to her, a massive black creature lay in the sunshine, its cybernetic implants now used only to monitor its health and happiness. Rex, Lucy called, using the name she had, given to her friend. Come help me plant these flowers. The creature that had once been called Vexthar opened its red eyes and looked at the small girl with pure devotion. It had found something the Krillians never intended to give it, a purpose beyond destruction, a reason to protect instead of destroy. Lucy had shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their ability to see potential friends where others saw only enemies, to offer kindness where others offered only fear. And in doing so, she had changed the course of a war that had seemed impossible to win.